Brumbies 2019 season preview. How are things looking? We'll have a look at some of the players, who's in, who's out, and who's still there. Their record from last season and what we can expect from them this coming season, and also a little bit on the schedule, where the bookies got them finishing, all that good stuff. But we'll start with the players. You got props on Alatoa, Vunipola Fifita, who's in new from the NRC. I do not know a lot about him. Les Macon, I'm going to take the easy road out with his name because it's a tricky one, but that's what people tend to call him. Tom Ross up from the NRC, and Scott Seo from last year. And James Slipper has come along from the Reds, so he's a pretty big signing after having some kind of personal issues over there in Brizzy. So hopefully Canberra proves a better location for him, that he can get both personal life and the rugby life kind of sorted on the same track, and then he puts in some good shifts. And a World Cup year for the Wallabies could be important. Hookers, Folau Fainga, Josh Manray, and Connell McInerney are all retained from last year. Josh Manray had a pretty big season-ending injury last year, so he didn't end up getting that much game time. Fainga was the big bolter from for the Wallabies last year. Earned the Wallabies cap kind of coming out of nowhere into the Brumbies lineup, mainly because Josh Manray got injured. Locks, Rory Arnold, Sam Carter, still there from last year, probably the two primary guys who'll be there in the second row. Murray Douglas has come across. Blake Ginniver's still around, and Darcy Swain. So there's a fair bit of depth there. Lock seems to be one of their stronger positions. Loose forwards, Tom Cusack, Lachlan McCaffrey, David Pocock, Pete Samu's come across from the Crusaders. Rob Valtini and Ben Hine. So don't underestimate how good this back row is. I mean, it's not just Pocock. Cusack, former Sevens man, he's a fair fetcher on his own, although he's not a world-class guy like David Pocock, but at Super Rugby level he's definitely very good. Lachlan McCaffrey, underrated by probably most. A lot of people probably don't know who he is. I didn't know that much about him, but last year, man, he had a couple injuries as well from memory, but when he played, he was often a difference maker. Pete Samu, we should see him there at number 8. So, I mean, he's class. He ended up playing for the Wallabies, played for a very good Crusaders team. It'll be interesting to see how his performance levels are for a team which, to be fair, is not as good as the Crusaders, and nobody's as good as the Crusaders. So, hopefully he's still able to maintain those high performance levels. Rob Valtini is this young guy who's supposed to be amazing, but just has the worst luck with injury. So fingers crossed he gets an injury-free season. And Ben Hine, I don't remember seeing much of him last year, but I could well be mistaken. Into the backs, Ryan Lonergan, Matt Lucas, and Joe Powell are the 9s. I would expect Powell to probably have the starting job there. Fly halves, Hawera, some guy who I have not heard of, Kuenzele. Bailey Quinzel, pronunciation, man, I apologize if anyone knows this guy. Tell me about him. It seems like he's come up from club rugby, so it's a bit of a lift for him. Christian Leofano is there as well. Midfielders, Ikitao is from the NRC. Again, a bit of a prospect for me. Not very familiar. I think I only saw 2 games of the NRC all last season. Kurudrani, Jackson Hope, and Lolesio from the NRC, another one that I will need you guys who are Canberra Vikings fans to give me some advice on. Ire Simone has come over from the Tars, former league guy. Didn't get a whole lot of game time, if any, last season with the Tars behind Kurtley Beale. So he may be there to kind of fill the gap left in that back line in the midfield. Tom Wright also come across from, I think it was Manly in the NRL, so we'll see if he gets any game time. Outside backs, Andy Muirhead, another guy who's kind of underrated because of his size. He's not all that big, but he is a pretty good player. Chance Penny, he's going to be making a push for the Wallabies. Tony Pulu's come across from the Chiefs. Now, he's got gas, and he's qualified to play for multiple countries. I don't think he's chosen one yet. I know he was qualified for New Zealand, for USA, for Australia. Well, he's not going to be New Zealand anymore that he's out of New Zealand, but perhaps one of the Pacific Islands. I don't remember. But I know he has a lot of options because he was like born in the States. Yeah, he's got lots of connections. So in the World Cup year, it'll be interesting to see what decision he makes. Henry Spate, he's been playing with Ulster and been playing very well, so hopefully he brings some of that form back to Super Rugby. Hopefully he's not too tired. Talioli, we saw a bit of him last year from memory. Tom Banks is lightning. He's very exciting. Hopefully we see lots of him at fullback because he is very, very good. Mac Hansen is another one for the future. And the coach is Dan McKellar, who continues on from last year. First year coaching last year didn't do too bad. Like I said, middling kind of performances, 7 wins, 9 losses, finished 10th, 2 points off the playoffs. For a first year coach on a team that on paper wasn't world beaters is actually a pretty decent effort. But I'll get to those expectations in a bit. Who have they lost? They have lost a few guys. Ben Alexander's retired. Misa Rasmus has gone to the Rebels. Nick Mayhew, I think, has kind of been released. Robbie Abel, who had a really good Mitre 10 Cup campaign for Auckland, has been released. I thought he might have picked up a contract based on that, some of that form. Richie Arnold, so Rory's brother, has called it quits. This is Rory's last season with the Brumbies, but Richie's already gone over to Japan. Whakasalea has also gone over to Japan. I don't remember how many games he played last season, but he scored try at least. I have the Greg Clark shouting his name in my mind whenever I read his name. So, yep, Izzy Nasarani is probably the biggest loss from number 8, but you've got Pete Samu in, so pretty good replacement for a pretty good player. Kyle Godwin, so that's where you probably get Simone probably playing at number 12, perhaps, although Godwin was kind of in and out of the squad last season. Yeah, James Dargaville didn't pick up a contract, neither did James Verity. So a fair bit of movement, but the core of the squad is still there. So I'm hoping Dan McKellar can do more of what he's been doing and get these guys all on the same page. He's certainly got a very good back row, some pretty good locks. How the scrum goes is going to be interesting. The backs, they're not the best backs, but you've still got some pretty good players. You got Kuridrani, you got Henry Spate, who had a kind of hot and cold season last year. Joe Powell, he's one of the guys putting his hand up for number 9 at the Wallabies, still behind Guinea, but yeah, there's still a good squad. How are the fixtures looking for them? Not as bad as last year, I think. Last year they, from memory, started 3 or 4 games away from home. They didn't play at Canberra for quite some time, and their start to the season last year was slow. I think they still went 2 out of 4 for their opening games, but they couldn't get a bonus point win over the Sunwolves, and the Sunwolves had was it a week or 2 weeks to prepare, and the Brumbies had a full preseason. They didn't flog the Sunwolves by any means, so they were a bit sluggish, and those points perhaps were a bit costly in terms of last season's final results. So they'll be wanting to get off to a better start this year. They got the Rebels and the Chiefs at home. That Rebels one is a very important one early on. Chiefs will be tough, but like I said earlier, that they've beaten the Hurricanes last year, so they're no strangers to beating top-level New Zealand teams. Speaking of the Hurricanes, they got them away in week 3. That'll be a tough trip to Wellington. Rebels away, so within the first 4 weeks, they've already played the Rebels twice. That's them out of the way. And the Rebels could really be either one of their key rivals for that top spot in the Aussie Conference, or perhaps a playoff spot. Last season was 8th. That was kind of up for grabs between the 3 teams. So, yeah, potentially important games early on. And the Waratahs are home week 5 and Reds away in week 6. So it's all Australia and New Zealand for them in the first 6 weeks. And then they have a bye, which in terms of spacing is pretty nice. You get 6 weeks of rugby under your belt, and then you've got your break. So perhaps the guys could use a rest at that point. Pretty well placed. Crusaders away in week 8. Lions are home in week 9, so the 2 finalists come week after week, back to back. Not easy. And then it's the trip to South Africa. Stormers in week 10, Jaguares in week 11, and then they are back, in Oceania with a trip to Auckland to play the Blues in week 12. That could be a kind of killer little run there, because they're going to be Canberra in week 9, Cape Town in week 10, Buenos Aires in week 11, Auckland in week 12. That's a lot of flying. I feel like they could use a bye in there at some point, perhaps after the trip home from Buenos Aires, but hey, it's Super Rugby, so they don't do that. Then they're at home to the Sunwolves, and then they get the bye. So they do get a rest, but if they go without a win during that period, it could be pretty nasty for them. Bulls in week 15 at home, Sunwolves away, that's a trip to Japan, 16, and then Waratahs in week 17 away, and then they finish the season with the Reds at home. So again, that could be a pretty key game at the end of the season to see how they go on. But yeah, I still feel like it's a manageable schedule. I've seen worse ones. It's definitely not the worst one. I do like the start. I think it gives them a good chance to get out of the blocks early, get a win over the Rebels. Hey man, if they can really push things and they keep their squad fit and they're on form early, get a win over the Chiefs before you head to Wellington to play the Canes, and then perhaps sneak a win over the Rebels away. You're 3 from 4, and you're flying. Potentially, who knows? Playoffs. The bookies have got them ninth favourite to win Super Rugby, so not a playoff side according to what the bookies have got there by the odds. But hey, man, I still feel like that Aussie conference is pretty open. Some Wolves are a lot better than last year. The Waratahs seem pretty steady. They've got their same coach. The Reds are the ones who perhaps are throwing the dice a bit the most with all the youth they're bringing through. But if they can get that right, they could also be a threat. The Rebels are another team who've brought in some talent. So yeah, it's gonna be an interesting one for them. For me, the main questions are about their consistency. Like I said, it was a slow start last season, despite the fact that they still got a couple of wins. And during the middle of the season, they kind of had a 5-game run where they went 5 losses in a row, and I was writing off Dan McKellar as a coach. I was like, nah, this team is getting worse, not better. This guy's not the man for the job. He doesn't got what it takes. Maybe Laurie Fisher needs to take over. But then at the end of the season, they managed to get it right. And perhaps that's just the guy in his first year. He needed to find out which players he wanted, who he wanted in what positions, what tactics he was going to play. Because they ended the season with 4 out of 5 wins. Like the last 5 games, they won 4 of them. So that they actually pushed the teams for the playoffs. When it looked like they were dead and buried, they were still not that far away. It never looked like they were quite going to get there, but they were still in the conversation right to the end. So yeah, consistency is going to be a key. They probably need to try and make Canberra a fortress and then pick up away wins where they can. Who plays 10 is going to be an interesting one because Leali'ifano is there, but he may shift out to 12 if Hawera is playing 10. But yeah, there's not, kind of like the Blues, they don't have a, I mean, Leali'ifano is good, don't get me wrong, but he's no spring chicken. And yeah, I'm not sure that they've got the man for 10. We will see what kind of style of game they're going to play. Is interesting. Like when Jake White was coached, they had a very distinct game plan. You had big boots of Jesse Mogg and Nick White. They seem to be moving away from that. I mean, Larkham kind of shifted away from it a little bit, but he didn't seem to have any kind of tactical masterclass going on. Dan McKellar perhaps has found a kind of right formula with a bit of counter-attacking play at the end of last season. He's got the players for it in guys like Banks, Muirhead even. I mean, I know people aren't going to rate him, but he's got Pulu now as well, Spate. So he's got the backs to kind of do that thing. So what style of game they're going to play? Hopefully he gets it pretty much the way he wants it from the start of the season this time, not just the end. And goal kicking, they were the worst in Super Rugby last year. They kicked like 65%. How many points did they leave out there? It would have been a lot. So they need to sort that out, whether that's getting a kicking coach in who can get them right. I remember when Andrew Mertens was over there with Bernard Foley at the Waratahs. He seemed to work wonders. They could use an 80% kicker for sure if they are going to make a push for the playoffs. But yeah, 9th is what the bookies are saying. I'd like to think they can hopefully push a little bit higher than that. But yeah, I do think that Australian Conference could be pretty competitive. We will see how things go. You guys let me know your thoughts on the Brumbies squad, on their schedule. How do you think they're going to go? Predictions. And if you are able to give any insights on some of these players who have come through the NRC or that one dude from Club Rugby, do let me know because I'll be keen to keep an eye on some of these guys. Some of them may not get game time, but still it'll be good to look out for them for this 2019 season. All right, guys. I will talk to you again soon. See you later.